Major news. After days on a razor's edge, Ukraine is now a nation at war.
This appears to be the worst-case scenario.
These are Ukrainian territories which are occupied today not by separatists, but by Russian army.
It's these kind of barrages that are forcing the Russians to withdraw.
Liberation of our territories is significant.
Russian Defense Ministry acknowledged their troops pulled back.
They have left their mark. Now Ukraine can begin to recover its dead.
Надіюсь на краще, ну хоча б поховати рідних.
I'm Bel Trew, the Independent's international correspondent, and in 2022 I was sent to cover Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In April, after ferocious battles, Moscow's forces dramatically withdrew from around the Ukrainian capital. My team and I went to the areas that for weeks had been occupied by Russian soldiers. Without phone connection or internet, they had been completely cut off from the world. It was the first time any of us had had access to these towns and villages.
Well, we're driving towards Bucha right now. It's about 25 kilometers west of the center of Kyiv. And here, Ukrainian officials say at least 300 people have been killed.
In a kind of daze, we wandered through this man-made hellscape, talking to the few civilians left who were emerging from their homes. Russia denied committing any crimes, but residents spoke of rape, torture, murder, and disappearances. On our way back from a day of reporting, we stumbled upon an abandoned Russian camp.
You can see behind me, but there's trenches, basically kind of living quarters. There's also burnt out armored cars everywhere and tanks. And also, unfortunately, just to the left of me is the remains of what the soldiers here say is a 16-year-old boy. His hands have been tied behind his back, his feet have been tied, and it's clear that he's been shot in the back.
Over the last decade of covering conflict, for me, the most devastating legacy of any war has been the families left behind without answers. Those whose loved ones have been disappeared, vanished into jails, or killed. Those people who don't know what happened. Those who lack closure. Those presumably like the family of this young man. How many bodies are there like his in Ukraine, lost and unclaimed?
Безпосередньо тут і знаходились позиції ворога. Тут ось мають місце до цього часу, навіть видно такі от капоніри, з яких вони робили спостережні пункти і дивилися за трасою.
This is the camp. Yeah, this is the exact location. Yeah.
Подорвали. Крила. Забирали хто. Потім вже. Ой, теж Росія.
It's actually quite eerie to be back here in this Russian camp over half a year later. The area is still covered in belongings of those Russian soldiers, everything from military rations to broken ammunition boxes. The local Ukrainian police say they still don't know what happened here, specifically to the Ukrainian civilians who are clearly held in this area. And the sad truth is that they may never know.
А потім, коли війська наші продвинулись далі і території вивільнилися Макарівської територіальної громади, то там взагалі був жах. Там тіла лежали. І судячи по характеру трупа на той момент, вони там лежали неділями. Ми проводили заходи по документуванню цих злочинів і під час активних бойових дій, але ми не могли зробити це не на всіх територіях, зрозуміло, тому що постійні обстріли.
As the months went by, the Ukrainians uncovered more bodies. But what haunted me was that young man, all alone, murdered and abandoned in a lonely patch of wood.
As I said before, we found this body in April. He appeared to be quite a young man. He obviously had been executed because his hands were tied and he'd been shot in the back. And we found him very close to a Russian trench, and we were wondering, did they ever find out the identity of this body?
На час тіло залишається неопізнаним трупом і не ідентифіковано.
Since the young man was not local to Makariv, we asked community leaders in the neighbouring villages that were also occupied if they could help us.
So this is exactly where we found the body. Can you talk me through where this person might have come from?
Ми були окуповані з 22 березня. Наступне село Андріївка теж була окупована. Казали, що до 40 чоловік пропавши, зниклі, закатовані, все.
Dozens of civilians vanished by Russian soldiers were apparently interrogated and tortured within these walls. The classrooms and playgrounds have been turned into Russian headquarters. The young man may have been held here.
І в основному забирали молодих хлопців. Багато людей теж забирали тих, які не понарали, чи щось не віддавали, чи знаходили воєнну якусь форму, чи ще щось. Цих теж всіх людей забирали.
Кого я знаю місцевих мешканців, немає такої людини, яка схожа на це тіло.
As we're talking to more and more people in this area, it's becoming apparent this is far more complicated than we ever could have imagined. There was Russian soldiers basically moving around prisoners that they'd taken from other areas of the country to this town we're in right now. There's also the problem of internally displaced people who fled to these kind of rural areas thinking it might be safer than the capital, and obviously that wasn't the case. So it's literally like trying to find a needle in the haystack.
One final option was trying the regional morgue, which pre-war was just a tiny rural facility. It became the collection point for all the dead discovered across the Kyiv region.
Це явно не тиждень часу, це більше тижня часу однозначно, але це незначний термін. Чи безпосередньо...
The forensic doctor didn't recognize the body. Found dumped in a wood without any context, the young man would be near impossible to identify. At that time, the teams here were handling hundreds of bodies and body parts.
В суматохі, в принципі, бувають випадки, коли відомі тіла можуть перепутати у зв'язку з тим, що мішки рвуться, документи розм'якають, і, відповідно, раніше встановлені люди можуть бути як не встановлені. Але був один випадок, коли в процесі якраз транспортування, доставки, перекладання цих тіл було здійснено така от маніпуляція.
How many unidentified bodies have you found basically since the beginning of the invasion? And of those, how many have been identified?
We still have more than 2,000 and a half, let's say.
Yuri says there are 2,500 bodies which still need to be identified. Half of them are civilians.
But we really don't know how many unidentified bodies are on occupied territory. Unfortunately, we think that could be 10 times more than we think. the scale of invasion and the scale of atrocities and scale of war crimes and the severity of these war crimes are really, really serious.
I hadn't appreciated how huge or complicated this problem was. I went to the International Commission on Missing Persons that have now set up in Kyiv because they've spent decades identifying bodies and documenting war crimes.
The issue of the missing isn't only about the family's right to know and right to truth and to be able to bury their missing relatives. It's also very much about justice and criminal accountability. Ukraine is quite unique in the sense that the authorities have actually launched an investigation into missing persons cases while the conflict is ongoing. I don't think this has been done anywhere else before previously, and this raises a whole load of different challenges.
Among those challenges are bodies being lost or mixed up. As we talked to Matthew, next door a Ukrainian teenager called Vladislav was having his blood taken for DNA analysis to try to find his mother.
Vladislav has been trying to find the human remains of his mother. He actually believed that he had found his missing mother. The human remains had already been burnt. He cremated them and then sought to bury them. It was actually somebody else that he'd actually taken for burial.
Поїхав десь приблизно 22 березня під Бучу на село Горівщина відвозити продукти. І 25 березня зранку вони звідти виїхали назад до Києва. І на Житомирській трасі десь сталася ця подія, виходить. З ними обірвався зв'язок повністю. Ну, от, в принципі, і все. З того моменту її не можуть знайти. Так, у соцмережах виставляли обяви, оголошення про розшук.
Did he get any responses to it? No.
Ну, там, скільки днів був, бачив, цілі фури трупів приїжджали, їх навіть не було де зберігати. І, можливо, там щось десь загубилось, щось не так підписали, ну, щось не туди відвезли. Ну, там нерозберіха, можна сказати, була дуже сильна.
Vladislav only found out that he had cremated the wrong body because lawyers at this law firm called him out of the blue in the summer.
So there was basically a body mix-up?
Yeah, mix-up body.
One of the lawyers had been looking for a relative called Oksenia, who was also killed by the Russians. It turns out the authorities had mistakenly given Vladislav Oksenia's body. Oksenia and her husband Maxim had tried to evacuate with their 6-year-old child and a female friend. The couple was shot by Russian soldiers before they could get to safety.
So Maxim's uncle was showing us video footage apparently of the moment that Maxim was killed, which is how this whole investigation was started. So you can see this drone footage.
It was just chance that a Ukrainian surveillance drone caught this moment. Maxim and Oksenia were desperately trying to flee Russian occupation along this road to Kyiv, which had become a major evacuation route. The couple did not realize Russian snipers were stationed on both sides of this motorway. Their car comes under fire.
So this is the shooting, the moment of the shooting.
It's a killer.
He's the person that killed them?
Yes.
That's the boy, that's the son, right? That's the child of Maxim. Absolutely frightening.
Oksenia's son and another female passenger survive. They are led away by a Russian soldier.
Ось бачимо поранену жінку з дитиною ведуть до ями на розстріл. І для чогось відтаскують від машини. У машині знаходиться вбита Ксенія, дружина Максима. Коли ми вже зрозуміли, що діти загиблі, це дуже тяжка була історія їх розшукати.
The same day we found the body in the woods, we met Vadim. Marooned by the destroyed remains of his family home, he was waiting for rescue workers to pull out the dead.
Надіюсь на краще, ну хоча б поховати рідних.
By chance, Vadim had been standing outside the block of flats that morning the Russian warplane arrived. He was actually on the phone to his mother the moment the bomb dropped. Most of his family were killed in front of his eyes. The remains were retrieved by rescue workers, and since it was such a clear-cut case, I assumed it would be easier for the bodies to be identified. The process has been chaotic. At one point, Vadim was handed a bag of 4 severed arms to identify. The case was transferred between different districts, and it seems his initial file was lost.
Тіла відвезли до різних моргів, там у 5 чи вроді в 5, в різних місцях. По-новому здавав також ДНК і по-новому давав свідчення, знову відкривали справу. І так, поки нічого не ясно, нікого заховати не вдалося.
It seems knowing the time, location and circumstances of the killings have not helped, and this appears to be a problem across the area. The first person we meet by the side of the road explained how his cousin was killed in shelling, but the body is still formally listed as unidentified. Holding his cousin's death certificate, the elderly resident said he is not a close enough relative for his DNA to make a positive match.
Ось днів 2 назад чи 3 вже він мені сниться. Оце я все время думаю. Я вже договорився із своїм батюшкою, щоб ті рештки похоронити вже, бо я скажу, я вже не можу, мене вже душа не видержує, що це так довго і хоч би вже от співати, то може б тоді легше було.
It's obviously a logistical nightmare for the authorities to have to try and gather all of these remains of bodies, DNA tests from family members who may be miles away or not even in the country, like this case. But it's still really hard for the civilians left behind. I mean, this man's saying it's been, 6-7 months since they tried to bury his cousin. And at the moment, it looks like the cousin may never be formally identified and will just be stuck in that limbo in a morgue.
Давай, пошел, затягивай! Быстрее, быстрее, быстрее! Твою мать, еще один! Давай, хлопчики, давай, быстрее! Блять! Валим быстрее, хуярят! Быстрее! Раненый еще там, сука!
It's one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. The authorities are overwhelmed, and that means across the country, volunteers like these people are risking their lives to recover the dead and wounded from the front lines. At full capacity, the morgues have to store the dead in railway carriages, refrigerated trucks, and shipping containers. In this facility in northern Ukraine, the forensic doctors say they are storing 250 bodies alone. and the police are discovering more bodies every day. Before Russia's invasion in February, these officers would have been handling traffic violations and petty crimes. Now they are on the front line of war crime evidence gathering, and they're trying to reunite people with their missing loved ones.
We just got to this village here with the Izium police, which is completely destroyed. There isn't a single building that's standing. We're following them now at the moment as they go to pick up a body that they've found, and they've told us we've got to walk directly behind them because this whole area hasn't been properly demined yet. And they're still finding bodies even weeks after this area has been liberated. The police have told us that this man actually died in March. He was an elderly man who was disabled and unable to get to the basement in time when shelling happened. And that just highlights the problems of trying to retrieve the dead. He's been here lying outside his house for 8 months, and it's only now, in November, that the security forces were able to retrieve the body and bring them back to his loved ones for burial.
In some cases, they're finding hundreds of unidentified bodies at once. Every single one of these neatly dug holes will be months, if not years, of work to formally identify the individuals, to work out what happened to them, to potentially document the crimes committed. The Ukrainian police have even opened mobile DNA labs with portable testing equipment provided by Western donors.
За допомогою цього приладу воно пришвидшить це все зробити. Ми зможемо виїхати на місце злочину, на місце масового поховання з даним приладом, встановити і вже на місці проводити експрес-аналіз ДНК. І за допомогою цього приладу ми більш швидко зможемо на протязі 24 годин встановити особу.
The bodies which produce no successful DNA matches are eventually taken from the morgues and returned to the earth. They are buried in special numbered graves until fresh evidence comes to light and someone comes to claim them. Perhaps the body in the woods we've been trying to find is here. We still don't know if he has any family, if anyone is searching for him, except for us.
We've counted 78 graves in this site here in Bucha, and bar a single one of them that has a name, all of them are unidentified and numbered. And that means that there's families across Ukraine who are looking for these people. I had the immense privilege of when my mum passed away of being able to be present at her bedside when she died, and the immense privilege of being present at her burial, and the immense privilege of knowing where that burial site is. And anyone who's experienced grief will know that there's something about being able to visit at least a place to pay your respects, and that has a form of closure, which is a form of healing. And I think that's the biggest tragedy here. That will be the legacy of Ukraine. That will be the open wounds that will never heal. People who never get that closure, who never know what happened to their loved ones. That's really hard to get your head around.
We're driving along the Zhytomyr highway right now. This was once nicknamed the Highway of Death. It was the main evacuation point for people trying to get out. A lot of people died on this highway at the time. They were shot by Russians or they were killed in shelling. Among them was Maxine and Oksana, and also, we believe, Vladislav's mother.
So Russian soldiers would have been here observing the road? And they were shooting from the other side mainly?
Mainly from another side.
They have the same
On the other side, so it's from both, yeah. And you wouldn't be able to see a soldier at all. It'd be completely and utterly hidden. You wouldn't have any idea. Yeah, because they're all over the place. There's one over there and here as well. They found the ID of your stepfather here. They have the car, but you still haven't been able to get hold of the body of your mother. I mean, why is that?
Тобто на моменті, коли саме збирали тіла, якось незрозуміло це все робили. Тобто, зрозуміло, що ніхто не каже, хто саме цим займався, які персони, як саме вони це робили. Ну, зі слів слідчого теж, як він казав. Тобто, хтось таку кашу заварив, намутив там.
After months of no news, the law firm has agreed to help Vladislav locate his mother's body. Orphaned and on his own, the teenager has even moved in with one of the lawyers called Serhiy, who has taken on his case and is now taking care of him.
You have a hedgehog. Where is the hedgehog from?
Тут, в Києві, купляв.
He's so cute. What's the hedgehog's name?
Юстя.
Ustya? Stop it. He's so cute. He's very cute. He's quite spiky though.
Розмова по мобільному телефону, і просто вона позвонила повідомити, що все добре, і вони залишаються переночувати, бо не встигають. Це було 24 березня. І це по факту була остання пряма моя розмова, і все.
Ну, що ти?
З'явились погані звички, бо до цього я, в принципі, взагалі ніколи не курив, майже не випивав.
Serhiy believes he has found the location of Vladislav's mother in one of the numbered graves. He thinks she's body number 500. They hope an exhumation will be imminent and then, in theory, there can be a DNA match. But Serhiy says the police are either overwhelmed and so unable or unwilling to help.
Можете таке представити? Перетасували. Ми домовлялися, що ви на минулому тижні ще нам скажете про фототаблиці, щоб ми знайшли маму.
Я ж вам говорю, бо оперативно, як попросили, я зразу позвонив, вияснив. Те,
Зрозумів.
що вияснив, я вам говорю.
Зрозуміло. Добре, тоді давайте будемо рухатись
Як тільки
документально.
знайду я її цю фототаблицю, я відразу вам повідомлю.
Добре, бо хлопцю треба їхати на навчання, а ми
А я з
якраз...
ним розмовляв. Ви думаєте, я не хочу йому допомогти? Я з ним спілкувався і розумію ситуацію.
Маму треба знайти, хлопця. І вона лежить на кладовищі, і я знаю де.
А підніму справу, знайду цю справу, первічку, яка була там, то я буду мати ці матеріали, я вам повідомлю. Бо ми ж так домовились, я так пояснив.
Добре. Ще раз вибачте, що я вас потурбував. До побачення.
До побачення.
Скотина іще одна.
Віддушина, хоч трошки я сюди, трохи, якось успокаююся, трохи віддаляюсь від того всього, трохи мені тут легше.
The authorities have reopened Vadim's case file, But despite having the bodies of his relatives and his DNA, the investigators are yet to make a formal match.
Коли я вдома, воно трошки починається депресія. Я теж почав буквально вчорашнього дня пити таблетки від депресантів. Тому що на самом деле воно важко.
Robbed of a proper burial, Oksenia's and Maxim's families have instead built a little memorial by the side of the road. It marks the place where they were killed on the highway, where that awful moment was filmed by the drone.
Тяжело всем, тяжело дальше. Как жить дальше без детей?
Last time you were here, you were trying to get hold of some photos of the crime scene so that you could move forwards with the DNA process. What happened?
Я надав клопотання, адвокатські запити, звернувся до керівника. Нарешті ми отримали. І прислав оцей останній труп, який є невідомий, ми 500-й. Ми зможемо зрівняти.
What if it's not grave number 500? What happens next?
Будемо шукати далі. І будемо до кінця, поки не знайдемо.
How are you coping? How are you dealing with this situation?
Maybe I live depressed mood. I have a problem to concentrate on some things. It's understandable that we try to find the answers.
Yeah.
We want to find our relatives. Yeah. We should have some answers.
And it's not only about finding the missing. Ukraine and its international partners are building tens of thousands of potential war crime cases. The murder of Vladislav's mother may end up being part of that.
It's extremely important to get everything accurate from the scene of the excavation.
That's an immense job to be doing when the country is still in conflict.
Exactly. If there's a break in this continuity, that's where you lose all credibility in a court of law.
How long could this process take? I mean, are we talking about this, Ukraine looking for its missing and identifying its bodies for a few years? Or
I would count this in, unfortunately, decades. This problem will persist. Hopefully, the Ukrainian authorities and the international community could pour all its resources into this and make that, time even less. That's a hope.
Despite searching for months, we weren't able to get any information about the body in the woods. I mean, so far we've tried the Makarov police, we've tried the Kyiv city police and the regional police.
And the SBU.
And the SBU intelligence. And we've tried the Bucha and Kyiv prosecutor's office.
Yeah.
And we've gone to the morgue. And we've spoken to all the local authorities, like mayors of the towns.
Yeah.
And we
check all the villages around, we check everything, was asking all the people, maybe they know something, nobody's given any answers.
I guess if we were family, we would be putting our DNA into the system and hoping that there was some kind of form of match. But even that, obviously, we're seeing with Vladislav and Vadim, even that is problematic.
Yeah. We can see that even the people who have, who had matches, they cannot find their belongings. So.
Yeah, even those with matches, they can't even.
Yeah.
Okay.
When we first stumbled upon this site in April and decided to dig into what had happened here, I don't think we had any idea just how difficult it was going to be to get answers.
І воно, майже рік пройшов, а воно як було, так і є.
From what we know, this young man was likely not a local. We know that the Russians were trafficking civilians that they'd arrested in different parts of the country through this area. We know that they were targeting young men, and according to some locals, they had been forcing young men to dig trenches and then executing them. But for now, this young man remains just a body in the woods.
Сегодня я также само приехал побыть вместе с ними, потому что когда я здесь чувствую, это последнее их место было на этой земле, и я как бы здесь хочу с ними встретиться.
Exploring his story has opened up a world that I didn't realize existed, despite the fact that I've been covering war for nearly 10 years. We met Vladislav, Serhiy, Vladimir. We learnt the story of Maxim, Oksana, and of course we followed Vadim through the process of this investigation. And for them, their lives have been irreparably torn apart by this war. And the lack of answers about what happened to their loved ones has meant that their lives are remaining on hold.
Зрозуміло, що на деякий час, в принципі, життя зупиняють, поки якось це все не збереш докупи.
That means that there are families across the whole of Ukraine who are looking for the people buried here. And I think that's what is the most devastating part of all of this. People like Vladislav who are desperately trying to do the most simple act of all, which is bury their loved ones. And that's going to be the cruelest fate here for civilians in Ukraine, is that they're not going to have the right to do that, to have the closure, to be able to put an end to their grief. Because these people that are buried here, these souls may never be identified.